Good morning. I'm Raymond from Caritas Social Action Network. Billy, thank you. That was inspiring and challenging in equal measure. My question, I'm thinking about Catholic communities. I'm thinking about Catholic parish. And I'm sure you're familiar with that from your background in Ireland. When, in my experience, most Catholic parishes don't see protest or campaigning as a natural part of their faith expression. I'm willing to be challenged on that, but I think that's probably true. Do you have any advice for communities like that might feel very distant from what you're describing, which is passionate, organised, informed protest at the centre of power in London, which, and thank God that you do that. Think of a local community that feel distant from that, and actually that feels distant from their faith. What advice would you give them to begin to see that as part of their faith, and what might they do locally to develop a practice of protest and advocacy?
Yeah, am I speaking? That's a good start. Yeah, thanks very much for that question. That's a really good question, because I grew up in a rural Catholic parish myself, and I certainly shared that. No one was going out chaining themselves to anything in Glenswilly parish when I was a child. What I would say first is, yes, when I spoke, it was a call to action, but we're not forcing anyone to get out into the street or shout from the rooftops or anything. Everyone's faith is their own private thing, and how you express that, whether as an individual or as a faith community or a parish, that's your freedom, that's your business. I would say that for Quakers, that tradition it's very ingrained. From the very beginning, Quakers were fighting against the grain of state repression. I would say yes, because of where I work and where I live in London, unfortunately, I don't get out to rural communities, even Quaker communities outside of London half as much as I'd like to. So I can only really speak from personal examples, but where I'm from in Letterkenny, there would be, they have a weekly demonstration, Gaza genocide demonstration every week. And Letterkenny is it's not a massive town. It doesn't have, it does have some kind of faith community and things like that. But people still get together, and those protests are quite well attended. I think that, and actually, Anne and myself were talking about this yesterday, that the trend of bonds, these kind of bonds that we have in society, have been breaking down in the last few decades, and we've been pushed towards being more individualistic. And I actually think that faith communities out in areas that wouldn't be used to banding together and it doesn't need to be out in the street with placards. As I said, it can be a vigil, it can be a group prayer. For instance, the Quaker meeting outside New Scotland Yard, that was a religious service. And I do think faith communities are one of the last bastions of these sort of groups that tie people together, tie communities together. And there's things, I think someone mentioned yesterday about social media and its influence and kind of tearing people apart. I would encourage as difficult as it is where you are, even if there's nothing to build up from in terms of solidarity, I think trying to maybe rebuild that is more important than ever. And even if you can't, lend some visible support to other faith communities that are, because that visible support really shifts the dial a lot more than you think. So yeah, I hope that somewhat answers your question. Thanks for that.
Raymond, I might just add to that. One of the things that as Billy works most nationally, my experience has been with Quakers very locally, and we have the same issue. We have friends who come to meeting because it's a spiritual haven, it's a place where they feel safe. They don't want the outside world in getting in their way, getting into that, because they have enough of that during the week. But then there are other friends who are very active and who want to do things in certain ways. So what we seek to do is to find ways of linking those friends nationally in communities of interest. So one of the groups the group I spoke to you about, which is about the Truth and Integrity group, is exactly that. But often we still get, because we're all of a certain age, I have to be honest, and many of us either have been very involved in various actions over the years, or are very new to it. And quite often we're hearing people say, we know this is wrong, but we don't know what to do. So we're almost having to go back to basics again and working with people and rebuild them. And I genuinely think that us all trying to do that together is going to be much more effective than each of us doing it in our own blocks. So I think partially what we would like to try and take away from this weekend is an awareness that we can work with ourselves, with our local communities, but also seek to connect with other communities as well. We take lady at the back, please, Michael.
Hello, I'm Jo Shadetska at Independent Catholic News. I'd just like to comment and also ask a question. I live in North London. My parish has half a dozen or so quite active people that go on most demonstrations, vigils and so forth. And we link up with the other parishes in the area. And we've been to most things. We've joined an organisation called Christians for Palestine. And we meet before demonstrations and have a prayer service. And I would love to publicise them more. And then my comment here is, could we not ask our church leaders to encourage us to do this? While we're sitting here at this conference, which has taken place year after year after year, there's a conference taking place at Oscott called We Believe, which has got 3 archbishops at it. Archbishop John Wilson, Archbishop Vaughan, Archbishop Mark O'Toole, and probably a lot of other bishops as well. Could one of them not be here? Or could one of them just send us a message of encouragement? I think if you got a message of encouragement from the pulpit, if a parish priest would say, sign this petition or join this prayer group, a lot more people will get involved. That's what I would say.
Hi, I'm Liam Purcell from Church Action on Poverty. From our perspective, in the UK poverty sector and thinking about benefits, we're cautiously optimistic about some of the ways the government's engaging and listening to people in the kind of dialogue you were talking about at the start, with the Timms review, and I've been involved in some discussions about fairness in how they implement net zero. There's signs of some, it's early days, but we're cautiously optimistic about genuine participatory listening. What's your sense of how that relates to these draconian laws? Have we got government doing contradictory things and not speaking to each other and thinking how they connect? Or should we be worried that those kind of participation engagement exercises are going to turn out to be the kind of meaningless consultation that placates people and just says, right, you've had you mustn't worry about this anymore, you mustn't engage anymore. What's your read on that?
Yeah, I mean, that's a question we've been asking ourselves in the last few weeks, whether this is an opportunity for us to maybe change strategy, maybe there's a few doors that might be opened. At the moment, we're sort of in wait and see. We're at that stage because the signals are definitely positive. But we need to wait to see the policies. For instance, a lot of the legislation I talked about came from the Home Office, and Shabana Mahmood has been retained in her position. So there are positive signals in terms of rhetoric, but there's, there might be a change. This legislation might all be gone by next year, hopefully. But if you keep the same minister in position, that also sends a certain signal. But yeah, I mean, even say for instance on protest, we definitely haven't got the inroads that we would have liked. Generally, in my experience, doing advocacy with Quakers, we've a very good reputation, thankfully, built over hundreds of years. That really helps us build trust. But in terms of kind of hard influence, there are other much larger organisations with deeper pockets that can kind of get into corridors that we can't. There are areas, say for instance, in terms of civil society, I would say the last government was actually made some positive inroads there. And we did a bit of work with other civil society organisations around the Civil Society Covenant. And there was movement there that we were very happy with. And I hope that maybe the new government can build on that. So it hasn't been bad news on all fronts, but yeah, very much hoping that the positive signals turn into positive action, and we'll be helping to hold them accountable for that. Thanks.
We have in the middle, at the friend in the yellow frock.
Hi, my name is Andrea from CAFOL. And I just wanted to reflect also about the discussion that we just had about how we encourage parishioners to attend protests. At CAFOR, I mean, we have really good experience, and we are very grateful that many people join the protests that we encourage people to join, especially during COP. Bishop John Arnold and some of the COPs demonstrations that we ran join us. I remember in Glasgow. And I think that one of the elements, to some extent, attending protests is a bit representative of the general population. Protests, not everyone feel comfortable attending protests, and I think that is reflected in the parish. But what worked or had worked in the past for us is have a really good organizer in your parish who basically invite people to come together as people of faith. The sense of identity, the collectivity of coming together to protest has worked really well in the past. This is one element. And also our experiences, the issue also matter. You know, Pope Francis has been strongly talking about climate, and so, you know, in many parish and in the Catholic community in general, the issue of climate has been quite present. So that has worked really well. So getting back the responsibility to us, maybe in our parish we can start to thinking how we can gently invite people to attend the next protest that we think would be relevant. This coordination, I think that is important. And also understanding the spirit of celebrating the diversity, that no matter how important a protest, there are different tactics or actions that everyone can take and would be more aligned with the different preference that people will have.
Friends, I'm conscious that we only have about 5 minutes, so I'm going to ask everybody, I'm going to take a couple of questions, but if we could try and keep them brief and we can get Billy to give an answer to them. So there are 2 friends here, one in the middle and one in the front, so we can take those both questions, please.
Thank you very much. Colin Kerr from North London, Pax Christi and also Peace Pledge Union. And what I want to bring forward is the way in which space, not just a head space, not just a mental space, being taken up by legislation and by influence, but physical public space. And we've experienced, I'm an activist in various ways, and experienced being excluded from public space. Not always because there is direct laws against it, but because people now feel empowered to try and push you off. I'll give you a particular example. Last year at the Proms, the Peace Pledge Union, Benjamin Britten, the author of, writer of War Requiem, was a big performance of War Requiem, and we attempted to put an advertisement in the programme. It was paid for, it was accepted, it was then pulled. It wasn't allowed to be put in the programme. The money was returned to us, so we decided to go and leaflet at the Proms. Everything was done to keep us away from the building. The space was public. It was public road. My background, I've been involved with planning, so I managed to get this completely overturned because there were yellow lines on the road which indicated that it was definitely public. But it was only because we battled that we were allowed to be there. Thank you.
Hello, Marion Pallister from Scotland, from north of the border, and I'm from Pax Christi Scotland and Justice and Peace Scotland, and I just wanted to make a bit of encouragement. Next Saturday we will be protesting at a vigil at Faslane, the nuclear submarine base. And that vigil will be led by Archbishop Bill Nolan, Archbishop of Glasgow. And we also, my diocese is Argyll and the Isles. That stretches from 14 miles north of Ireland up to the tip of Lewis, the island of Lewis. And with the help of Bishop Brian McGee, we have set up a prayer group, and every week, every Thursday, I send prayers to Palestine, which are collected from people from Stornoway to Campbelltown. And I think that our church in Scotland is very supportive of all of these kinds of protests, so it can happen. It's okay. Just ask.
Michael, there's a hand raised just over here. Cute.
My name is Maria Lee. I'm an associate of the Sisters of St. Joseph of Peace. I'm also involved with Pax Christi, and I'm on the NEC of the Cooperative Party. Now, I'm not quite sure if you're all aware, but our new Prime Minister is our first cooperative Prime Minister. And he's all about communities, listening to people, acting on their behalf. I think this is the time that we all write to him and express many of the things that Billy has told us and ask him to do something about it. I know him, not very well, but I do know him, and I know that he is a good person and he listens. And hopefully, if he is influenced by a powerful lobby such as we are, he will act on it. Thank you.
Can we take the friend at the back, please, Michael?
Good morning. My name is Kevin. I'm a member of the Columban Missionaries. First, I just want to thank Billy for a very prophetic, poetic, and powerful presentation. It was a breath of fresh air. Now, what's troubling me is that whole issue of institutional, a culture of institutional prudence, establishment prudence. The Catholic Church, of which I am a minister, sadly, at the hierarchical level, is largely crippled by that kind of culture of prudence, of saving the establishment face, as it were. And it saddened me when I was in London for 2 years, before I came to Solihull, that at vigils and protests in Parliament Square that were all peaceful, there were some clergy there, not many, and some Anglican brothers and sisters, a couple of Anglican bishops in their full attire, their full gear, as it were. But I was really saddened that my Catholic leaders and shepherds were largely absent. Or if they were there, they had covered up their collar, or certainly did not wear any clothing that would identify them. Now that's a big issue, and maybe Billy might comment on that whole thing of when we become part of an establishment and a major institution, we tend to be, maybe unconsciously, extremely prudent. And when there's a clash between prudence and prophecy, prudence always wins. Prophecy is part of our Judo-Christian tradition. The prophecy of challenge, the prophecy of rebuke, the prophecy of hard truth. But we seem to have forgotten that, and we need to, in our just talk, return to that prophecy tradition. I was disappointed a little, I must say, coming here with the title of this year's gathering, the main theme, Just Talk. I'm 1000%, if that's possible, for just talk. In other words, communication that is just, authentic, it's about listening and dialogue. We're all for that. But we also need to go beyond that. What changes the dial? We need to go to just action, following just talk, and just prophetic action. Thank you.
I just want to say something very briefly to that. I had the very same thought myself, that when I saw the theme, I very much saw the capital J in just, and I don't want to get into this too much because it's maybe for the event later when I'm speaking more in a personal capacity, but one thing I saw a lot of when I was in Palestine was there are a lot of peace initiatives that they describe themselves as peace initiatives, and the philosophy was put both sides in the room and let them talk. And the problem with a lot of those initiatives was that it completely ignores the underlying power imbalances, and it's at that totally agree with you that, you know, that's just talk with a small j, whereas, you know, just talk with a capital J is a lot more work, but a lot more reward. And actually, what I would say is, you know, this kind of protest, you have that same power imbalance, and it's working to address that. So I totally agree with that.
Friends, I'm afraid we're out of time because you need to go and get your caffeine fix. Billy's going to be here until
This evening?
this evening. Yeah. He won't be here tomorrow, so if you want to grab him over coffee, not now because I need to talk to him, but immediately for later today and lunch and this afternoon, he will be in some of the workshops. So do feel free to go and have a chat with him. Thank you, friends.
Thank you.